welcome. James Hands here from Awaken Therapy. Today we're going to talk about childhood trauma again in terms of reactions to childhood trauma. I've got Bodhi here joining us today as we unpack really a very difficult issue, but it's something very exciting because when we understand how we've reacted to trauma and the symptoms that tends to generate, it's the key, really. It's the missing link to start to get to the causes, the root causes of these issues. So rather than just dealing with symptoms on that surface level, we can get to the origins and start to clear the stuckness, the energy, the trauma that's there, and symptoms dial down. Symptoms can alleviate, symptoms can disappear altogether. So trauma, childhood trauma is such a common thing. Trauma is really just very stressful experiences that haven't been processed. There hasn't been the support, the help to deal with them fully. So they're stuck in our body, stuck in our mind. And as a child, traumas can be outside the home. It could be something like bullying at school, or being molested by a stranger, or a car accident or something like this. And if that's not dealt with adequately, if the child isn't brought back into safety or a way of dealing with all the emotion, it can get jammed up as trauma. Trauma can also happen, of course, within the home. Growing up in a dysfunctional home, it could be abuse, it could be an addiction issue there, it could be violence, could be neglect, all sorts of variations of that. But what we now know is that unresolved stress, the trauma that hasn't been resolved, it doesn't just go away with time, it sits deep inside us. I've been doing this work for a long time as a psychologist, psychotherapist, hypnotherapist. I'm so passionate about it because when people are courageous enough to turn up for the work, it might take time, it takes great determination and courage, but we can get to the origins, we can get to the root cause. And especially combining this kind of work with some body work and some other things, we can really get the shift on these stuck energies. So let's focus in on trauma reaction. And you would have heard of fight, flight, freeze. Well, there's another one too, which is fawn. So we've really got the four F's of trauma reaction. And these reactions are not conscious, they're not chosen, they're not something we get to decide on. It's really like an automatic reaction of the subconscious mind-body, depending on the person's wiring. There's a number of variables why. I haven't worked out exactly why one person reacts in fight, another person in fawn. We tend to react in a bit of a mix of these ways as well. It's usually not cut and dry just in one of the F's, one of the reactions. But it is something that just happens. And so let's look at the four F's, these four reactions, and the kind of symptoms that they tend to leave us with. So fight is that cornered animal, reactive, defensive, backed in a corner, aggressive, survival strategy. And that can work. That can help, of course, in some way. But if that energy, if that reaction is very stuck, it tends to cause a kind of a selfishness because we're so defended, we're so stuck in my survival that other people's thoughts, feelings, wishes, experience, there's no room for it. It just doesn't even register. It's like we lose access to any kind of empathy. So as we dial up that reaction, we find increasing levels of what we'd call narcissism. In a really severe form, it would be narcissistic personality disorder. But if we see it as a trauma reaction, see it as someone who's just completely absorbed in themselves, in their own survival. And that defensive fight reaction means there's no processing, there's no rational, there's nothing else but me. Everyone else is to blame. I'm the victim. It's you're the problem. I'm the good guy, and there's no rational entry of anything other than that. There's no room for that to get in. So it's very hard for people very stuck in that defensiveness to sort of start to look at their own stuff. It's very difficult to, when we're that defended, to get to our stress because the whole defense strategy is about projecting, it's seeing it externally. But if someone in that kind of frame can get to the origins, obviously there can be a reduction of those symptoms or that condition, if you like. The second F, flight. So flight is running away. Flight is, getting away from the situation. And so that adrenal reaction, that response in the body, if we're in a life-threatening situation, if we can get away from it, I don't know, run away from the bushfire or, the bad person or whatever it is, obviously that can allow us to survive. Often though, especially in childhood trauma, we don't have that option. Maybe we're dealing with an abuser and we just can't get away. We don't have the strength to get away, or we don't have the resources yet. And so actually acting at that flight is not possible. And so what happens is, in somatics they call it an incomplete movement. So the energy of that running, that energy of getting away is stuck in the body. And over time that can show as anxiety. It can show as obsessive compulsive. It can show as ADHD. It's that energy of running, but if it's stuck inside, it's like someone's just bouncing all over the walls, very hard, obviously. And so there's, kids, trying to concentrate at school. There's not a hope. They've got all this flight energy bouncing around. And often it gets diagnosed as ADHD, or it can be diagnosed as obsessive compulsive disorder or something like that. But if we see it as just a flight energy that hasn't had a chance to be expressed, released, moved through the body, it gives us a chance to heal it at the root cause rather than just treat it at the symptomatic level. The third F is freeze. Maybe we all know that feeling. That's the one I tend to automatically, go to. That's quite a strong kind of collapsing in. It's freeze. It's playing possum. It's basically the body mind taking over and saying, well, if we play dead, maybe we survive. If we play dead, maybe someone's just not going to, look at us, or we won't get noticed in the stress. And so that freeze reaction tends to depression, tends to withdrawal, shut down. We dial that up, it tends to lead into the dissociative disorders. This is the checking out. This is the daydream on a mild level. On more extreme levels, dissociation is losing time. There's some people with a situation, they used to call it multiple personality disorder. They call it dissociative identity disorder now, where people actually lose that identity. They step into another identity and they black out to this and come back a day or two later or whenever, and they don't have a memory of what's happened. Very distressing for people. But that can be treated too, not easily, but that can be treated too, even at that extreme. But if you think of it, dissociative disorder, let's dial that back into an ADD, attention deficit disorder, real trouble focusing because they just can't be in the room. Think of that in a class situation with children at school. We can start to understand it as, okay, they're in that trauma reaction, freezing, checking out, dissociating. So once again, as we get to the root cause, as we clear the stress held there deep in the body-mind, we start to get more healing, more response. So the fourth F is fawn, or another word for that is please. So the pleasing reaction, this is one personally I found myself going to a lot. It's a reaction of, if I please, if I appease, if I calm the aggressor, if I can, placate them, settle them down in some way. Think of a dog who kind of bares its neck. If I can submit, if I can surrender. But it's an active survival strategy. It is a very strong trauma reaction, and it's becoming more recognised now, where we're going to pleasing, appeasing the aggressor to get a better deal, or to reduce the threat. And so this tends to turn into things like the fixer or the rescuer, or some people use the word the enabler, the child who's enabling a condition, situation to continue. Often the child becomes the parent, the parentified child. The child is parenting the parents in a way to try to please them, or get a better deal. It tends to escalate into codependency issues, because rather than someone having their needs and the other person has their needs, and there's a sort of a mutual collaboration and compromise and argument, and to get the boundaries right and the balance right. And instead of that sort of dynamic in relationship, it's like the trauma doesn't allow for the person to have their own needs. It's all about keeping the other person happy. It's all about pleasing, appeasing, fixing, rescuing. I call it over-responsibility. So the child doesn't know how to give to themselves, or should I say the adult in future relationship doesn't have that ability to look after their own needs. It's all about keeping the other person happy. And so it's quite common for a pleaser to wind up with a fighter, an overgiver, an over-responsible person in that trauma reaction to wind up with a more selfish, fighting, narcissistic type. Very common dynamic. Codependency issues, overgiving, a trouble, with setting boundaries, feeling worthy enough, naming our own needs, expressing difficult emotions in the fear of upsetting the other person. These are all the sort of adult issues of the fawn reaction, the child with reacting to trauma in that way. So we're mapping those four, and I hope that's helpful and informative, and I think it's very powerful, useful information to piece this together. These are my symptoms, but what does it go back to? And so in all these ways, we're going back to unresolved stress, unresolved trauma. So let's do a bit of process now. I'd invite you to drop in again, to close the eyes if it feels comfortable, to lengthen the breathing. Just take a moment to notice the contact with the chair or whatever you're sitting on, resting on. Just allow yourself to feel the support of the body. Know that the body's held and safe. And know that as we do this sort of process, this sort of inner work, that it wouldn't matter how deep we go. You're always conscious. You're always in control. And so following the breath, going deeper within. And I want you to notice that stress traumatized part of you. At whatever age they turn up, it's perfect. She might be really young, he might be older, happy, sad, doesn't matter. However you notice this part of you turning up, that's perfect. Just welcome them. And just fill in the blank here, just answering this question for this part of you. How did this part react to the stress, to the trauma? Was it more of a fight reaction? Was it flight? Was it more freeze or please? Might be a mix of different ones. Just take a moment to notice this, observe this. Just take a note of how you reacted in that automatic subconscious way. And when you're ready, I want you to bring in your adult resources. The love, the wisdom, the strength, the power that you are as the adult. And even if it's a bad day as an adult, even on our worst day, even when we're really struggling as an adult, we're infinitely more powerful than we are as a child. So don't underestimate yourself here. Just gather up those resources. You can draw on an internal team of support if you wish. Some friends, mentors, good family. You can bring in an army, some muscle, some strength. You can bring in your guides, your angels. You can bring in animals, spirit in whatever way. Bring in a bit of a team, collect a bit of a team here of people, beings that love you, care about you. And just in your imagination, notice when you've got your team assembled, it might be just one other, it might be 100, and bring them with you now as you connect to this traumatised part of you. And surround them. The goal here is to create safety for him or her. To create a feeling of loving safety for them. Surround them. Just gently bathe them in this powerful presence. It's full of strength to protect them. And you can even say, hey, you're safe now. We're here to protect you. I'm here to keep you safe. And in this space, just bringing this soothing energy, like a bath, like a warm bath of love, of care. It might be a warm washer over the forehead to soothe the brow. It might be the surrounding warmth of a towel or a blanket. It might be a hot, sweet drink, like a nice warm cup of hot cocoa or something. Just bringing all this, whatever your imagination wants, whatever this part of you needs, just bringing in this loving support so they feel safe. And you can say to them, yeah, it's over. That's all over now. You're safe now. And I'm here now to help soothe your nervous system, to bring that sympathetic nervous system back to calm, to bring the parasympathetic back online, to calm the nerves, to let you relax in the body, to let your heart settle, the mind settle. And just notice how the younger you responds to this loving support, this loving attention. Just breathe it in whatever form it's here for the child. Just notice how the body responds. Giving your nervous system permission to let go and relax. And just as you breathe that in, just take note of what you're doing here. You're bringing this loving, calming medicine through to a stress-stuck part of you. And whether it's a fight reaction, flight, freeze, fawn, just notice maybe some reduction in that reaction. And as you hold the child in this, take as long as you need. You can do this again. You might like to set an intention to play with this, to repeat this hypnotherapy process. This is self-hypnosis that you're doing right now. This is childhood rescue you're doing right now. This is trauma release you're doing right now. And you might set the intention to repeat this every day for a week or two. And as you gently bring your awareness back into the space, when you're ready, deepening the breath, soft eyes opening, gently coming back into a normal waking consciousness. Just notice how you feel. Just notice how this all sits for you. And you might like to set the intention to continue with this work. My privilege to be part of that journey for you in whatever way. Feel free to reach out, send me an email. Always here for you. Well done today. Hope you found it helpful and useful. Change is not easy. It takes courage to face our demons, but it's always possible. Love always heals. And I wish you well on the next step of the journey. We'll see you next time.